We are live. Hey, hello and
Woohoo!
welcome. Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough, joined by my friend and co-host, Rachel Jameson. How you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing good. Hey, I moved up from co-host to friend and co-host. I like this.
Yeah, always been friend and co-host.
Hey, this is my first podcast from our house.
Your
The
new
new house.
house, mostly
Yeah, in
moved.
in my little pantry room. I don't know if you want to call it pantry room, butler's pantry, whatever. It's a bedroom that I have turned into a pantry.
Well, we're going to call it the podcast studio, so
Yeah. Yeah.
temporarily anyway.
Yep, I
Well,
got all my cookbooks and my homestead books and my herbs and my flowers and stuff in here and my equipment. So, yep, fun.
all that being said, we are experimenting with your new internet too, so we're hoping that's going to all work.
Yeah,
It should. It should work good. So we're hoping.
I'm a little nervous about it, but yeah, we're using Starlink. It's kind of
Yeah,
our only option out here. Um, so if this fails, I will be sitting in the library parking lot doing a podcast with you.
I think you're going to be fine. It seems to be working great. We've been on here for
Yeah,
a
we've
few
been on
minutes
a little bit
talking.
and it's working, so that's great.
Awesome, awesome. Well, today's topic is going to be the Homesteader's Guide to Grow Lights because people have questions about grow lights, right? I've actually seen a bunch of questions popping up about grow lights lately, so I thought it'd be a great
Yeah.
topic. We thought it'd be we wondered, was that something worthy of a whole podcast episode? Because we've talked about grow lights in passing when we're talking about seed starting and things like that, but there's a lot of information about grow lights, and I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about
Mhm.
which ones to buy, what are they looking for. I think they're wondering how to set them up for the best growth. So we're going to answer some of those
Yeah.
questions today in this podcast. So before we jump into that, how are things going on the homestead, Rachel?
Um, well, they're finally settling down. I'm unpacking some boxes. I have some sprouts going, which I'm really excited about because we've really missed them. We usually do them all winter, but just been too busy. So I have some sprouts going and unpacking some boxes, starting to cook some stuff again, and I'm getting really excited for starting new beds. So everything's new here.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
get
I seen
excited.
you posted something about you putting some sweet potato slips and things like that, getting them going. And
Yeah, I have some sweet potatoes that made it through the winter, and I'm starting some slips from those. I might order just to be safe. I might order some slips, but we're gonna do some sweet potatoes. My potatoes that I grew last year, I still have a few of those left. Those seem to be holding pretty good, so I might be able to use those as my seed potatoes. So, yep.
I went through my seed box the other day, just kind of seeing I've got a lot of seeds. I
Yeah,
admit I
yeah.
have a problem, but
Yep.
there's always a few things you need to kind of that they're you figure they're really old, or maybe
Mhm.
you've used a lot of them. And so I was trying to figure out what I did need to order. I do need to put in a seed order for a few things. I always need to, I save a lot of seeds and I've bought a lot of seeds in the past. So it's like I have a
Yeah.
lot. So just figuring out what I need to order so I'm not being wasteful and just ordering things I don't need to order, because you want to order everything, but you don't
Oh,
want to use
it's
up
so
what you
hard
got.
not to. Yeah.
Well,
Those catalogs come.
it's been really crazy around here, though. I am the proud grandfather of a new granddaughter that was just born a few days ago. So
Congratulations.
thank you. We're happy, and my youngest daughter just announced that she's pregnant with her second baby. So we're
Oh,
going to
how
even have another one
fun.
this year. So
You have more
we're
helpers in the garden.
yes. So we're at 4 right now. We'll be 5 by the end of this year, looking like, and yeah, growing. The quiver is full and the arrows are flying. They're
You're gonna have to make sure you have enough berries planted for all those
Oh,
kids to
that's
go through and eat
yeah, as they
them.
get a little older, yeah, they love those. They love all the fruits and berries. That's
Yes, they
they'll
do.
strawberries, the blueberries, I tell you what, they really like those plums too, those little plums I have. There's a lot
Oh,
of
I
stuff
bet.
out here. They really anything sweet and sugary, they
Yep.
love.
Yes. Yes. That will be so fun, though. So how old is your oldest one?
My oldest grandson, he just turned 8 a couple days
Okay.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I have a 7-year-old granddaughter, and then I have how old's Eloise? She is 3, 4, 3,
Okay.
a 3-year-old, and then now we just have a brand new
So you're
baby and
gonna
want
have
another one.
so you have 5. I mean,
Yes.
including the bun in the oven.
Yes. So we'll see
Wow.
how it goes. I think the boys need to catch up. Hopefully she has a boy, because that's 1 to 3 right now.
Well, that's
My
always fun.
grandson's gonna get ganged up on. He's in trouble.
But that's been keeping you guys busy because they've made
Yeah,
your house.
yeah, my wife's over helping out with the baby right now at their house, so I've been kind of just holding down the fort here. So it's kind of been a busy season. There's seasons like that, isn't there, in
Yes, there
life?
is. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
So
we
yeah,
talked about doing this podcast because where we live at, you kind of got to start things early. It's the further north you live, the sooner you have to start things, and it's not very we can't put tomatoes outside right now. And so yeah, we got to start using grow lights to
well,
extend our season here.
since the first year I started homesteading, extending the season has always been really important to me. I first got into this,
Mhm.
it was all about health and eating healthy, and right off the bat, I planted some stuff, and then I realized I want to eat a salad every day, from my garden and healthy stuff.
Right.
And so not only was I just trying to extend the seasons outside, I actually made indoor grow beds and had grow lights there too. So now my grow light setups have completely changed over the years, because back when I started doing that,
Yes.
the LED, the grow lights weren't affordable. They were just
Oh
out of
yeah.
this world expensive.
Exactly.
So I was using fluorescent bulbs, which is still, we'll talk about as we get to it, it's still a very viable option to use the fluorescent, like the shop light setup. And it did great. I was able to do really good with that. So we'll talk about that. But I just feel like for most homesteaders, especially if you're in the colder climates like we are, that season extension is really important, and getting that head start on your seedlings, or even just being able to grow things through the winter is pretty
Yeah.
important if you're into it for the health and want to keep eating, fresh food, fresh healthy food year round, especially. So
Yeah, I was the same. I mean, I started with buying my seedlings, and then when I started extending my season using lights, I ended up with your old fashioned. Um, I just went to the local box store and got some fluorescent bulbs and used those. But of course, now I have the LEDs, which I love,
yeah, me too.
but they were really expensive at first, and now they've become super affordable.
Yeah, very. Yeah, we both have the same brand that we're using. Yours are a little different than mine, and I'm
Yeah.
very happy with them. I think we'll talk about it later, but I would have bought a little differently had I known what I know now. But yeah, I mean they work great. They work better than the fluorescents. They use less energy than the fluorescent bulbs, and yeah, they're doing a great job. And they have gotten really affordable. And I don't know that we'll talk about the brands we own, but I think there's a lot of good brands out there. I won't necessarily
Yeah.
push the brand that we use. I mean, even though I think they do a great job, I think there's a lot of them. I just think find something affordable, find something that we're going to talk about, light spectrums and lumens and things like that. And if it meets all the criteria of what you're wanting, then just go for the best deal. I think is probably the way to go. I mean, I think some of them maybe last longer. I,
Probably, yeah.
I've been using my Barinas for a few years now, zero issues.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say, gosh, mine are probably at least 6 or 8 years old.
Mine are probably 6 or 7. Yeah, they're in
Yeah,
that
I mean,
range
I've been
too, and they're
using
doing
them
good.
for a long time, and
Yeah.
they're on a lot. Of course, you
Mhm.
only use them 3 months maybe out of the year, and then they
Yeah.
sit, and then you put them away till spring.
Yeah, and I've never had a bulb burn out or anything, but the
Yep,
flip side of
neither.
that is I had the fluorescents, and I changed bulbs several times when I was using those for a few years. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and we'll get into that. So, why use grow lights? Well, like we mentioned, starting seeds indoors early is probably the number one reason most homesteaders are going to use grow lights. Um, get that head start and save some money too. I mean, plants cost a pretty good chunk of money if you're going to buy plants, but you
Yes.
can buy seeds a lot cheaper, and you can buy those, make a one-time purchase of some shelving and some grow lights, maybe some timers for your setup, and every year you're going to be able to save a lot of money just by using
It
seeds. And
saves so much money, and in the last few years, I don't know if you've noticed this, but, the price of seedlings has gone up a lot, just as much as food has. I mean, just
yeah,
insanely a lot.
yeah.
So,
Well, I had last year, I had
yeah.
a little incident where I messed up and I was hardening off all my tomatoes and pepper plants, and I forgot about them and I left them out there overnight, and it got
Oh,
cold
oh,
and they all
no.
died last year. And I had to go buy, so I was late, and I was like, I don't have time to start seeds again. So I went and bought all my pepper and tomato plants, and I planted them. And it was a
Yeah,
chunk of money. I was really disappointed because I had some nice
it is.
plants, and I just, we're hard. That's where, it is. We've talked about it before when seed starting. I mean, it's the hardening off process
Yeah,
is your most delicate stage, and it's just, you got to be careful, and I
yeah.
messed up, and That's what happens when you get too busy. I need to set alarms on my phones because I'm a forgetful old man.
Oh man, I do the same thing. Well, the other thing too is we all get these beautiful seed catalogs in the mail,
Mhm.
and you get so many more options when you decide to start from seed. Um, there's just, I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sure the listeners have noticed, but there's got to be a couple hundred kinds of tomatoes out there.
At least.
So if you
Yeah.
go to this box store, you're going to get 5 to 10 options. But
Yeah.
if you have your seed catalog, boy,
Yeah.
you have so many options. And so that's one of the reasons too for starting is maybe you want to experiment with some different
Mhm.
kinds,
Yeah, I
flavors.
did that last year. I think I grew several kinds. I did now I say I lost all my tomatoes. I lost all my Romas and my beefsteak and some big boys and things like
Oh,
that. But I did still
no.
have like my cherry
Yeah.
tomatoes and some spoon tomatoes, and there were some things like that that were fine. I didn't have them out, harden them off, so I did have those. I didn't have to buy those, but yeah, all my big tomatoes I had to I had to repurchase. And I'll tell you, I bought in my and I hated that too because the pepper plants I was growing, I started them really early and they were looking really, really good.
Oh,
And the ones I bought didn't look so good, and they
that's
did
so
not do that well
sad.
last year. They just didn't I didn't have a good pepper year last year because of that, and I think I would have had a
Bummer.
really good year had I been able to if I'd have used the plants that I started. I think they would have done great. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, I think seed starting is the number one reason why you're going to want to grow lights. Growing food year round, like we mentioned, if you want to set up some indoor grow beds
Yeah,
or do like what I
that's
do
an
with
option.
aquaponics, you need some grow lights on those, and it will, you'll be
Yeah.
able to grow things like lettuce, and sometimes
Yeah,
you can
just
do some of the
even if
stuff.
it's just greens.
Yeah, yeah, you grow a lot in windowsills and stuff. So I mean, you
Mhm.
may or may not, if you have a really sunny south facing, some windows or something and some area to put some stuff, you might be able to get away with that with things like
Yeah.
leafy greens. But some stuff requires some extra light, which brings me to the next thing, which would be just supplemental natural light. Say you have some windows, but you need a little bit more. It isn't quite enough. You can hang some. You could just run some lights in the early morning and late evening and just kind of supplement that and kind of give it that little few extra hours of light that it might need too.
Right.
So I actually did that in my greenhouse. I actually had them hanging over. When I had the aquaponics on the one side of the greenhouse, and it was wintertime and I was doing some stuff there. But of course, your days are short, and I was growing some stuff that needed some
Mhm.
more light. So I would run the lights in the evening for about 3 hours extra, give it some more light, so things would grow, and it worked really, really well. So you can do that. Also, you might get it for just improved plant health. If you're providing the right light spectrum, like if things got you're growing in a window, maybe, especially with more modern windows, they have the UV protection.
Yeah, they have
They're
so
blocking a lot of that out, and you might need that, to get improved plant life. It might make something grow, but it's going to get really spindly, and it's going to stretch, and it's just not going to grow right. So you might need that light to really give it that improved plant health.
yeah,
So
I mean, these new windows are super energy efficient, which is great, but they're not great for growing like you
yeah.
used to be able to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I used to start a lot of things on my kitchen table right in the windows, and then we had new windows put on, and I've noticed things
Mm.
don't grow as good in that area now as they used
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you rely on your garden for food production and healthy eating, and you want to grow things, a lot of food, yeah, I mean, I feel like grow lights, and depending on where you live, of course, grow lights could be really, really important for maximizing those yields and getting a steady supply of homegrown produce. So I think they're an important investment for a homesteader.
Yes, for
So
sure.
let's jump into types of grow lights.
Oh
Mostly
boy.
we're going to talk about three types, and two I feel like are pretty viable. The other one is more for commercial setups and big
Yeah.
operations.
Yeah.
Um, and the first one we'll talk about, of course, is fluorescent grow lights. I think fluorescent bulbs can do a great job for seed starting and growing some leafy greens like lettuce. I did it for a few years. It works well.
Yeah, I
And
still have some that I
yeah,
use in emergencies, but yeah.
yeah, I used them for a long time, but the reason, and I'll get into the cons, of pros and cons here in a minute, but you got the T5s, T8s,
Mhm.
T12s. They're very common. You can go to about any box store, Walmart, anywhere and buy them. The
Yep.
shop light setups and the bulbs. They're very affordable. They're really cheap. Um, and they're especially good for seed starting. The light spectrum on them is it can be if you get the right bulbs, which if you want to
Right.
get the 5,000 lumens, that's generally a heavy blue light, and it will grow. It'll start seeds really, really well. Um, the T5s are the most efficient and compact ones. The T8s are slightly less efficient, but they're still functional. The T12s are pretty outdated and they're less effective. So I won't get into all the differences of those, but just know you're probably looking for the T5 bulbs are probably the best ones if you're going to go with shop lights. They
Right.
are the pros, affordable. They're good for seedlings and low light plants like lettuce and
Mhm.
other things like that. And they are available in different spectrums. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we start getting into the what you're looking for on the lumens and
Yeah,
light
and you
spectrum.
can usually get those locally really easily, so
Yeah.
that's another pro.
Yeah. If you got any big box store like a Home Depot or a Menards
Yeah.
or a Lowe's, or like I said, sometimes even a lot of Walmarts carry some variances on the bulbs, you can probably find them. They are less efficient than LEDs, so they
Yes.
will use a lot more electricity. I won't say a lot more, but definitely more than LEDs. And depending on how many you're running, that could be a big difference. Here was the thing I was thinking about. If you're only going to set up a shelf and lights for seed starting, and you're only going to be running them a couple months, and maybe you only have 2 or 3 shelves you're going to be seed starting on, I think it's a completely acceptable option. And in the long run, it probably wouldn't even cost you that much more, if any more.
Probably not.
If you're going to run them more than that and run them like year round and be out constantly starting things, you're going to look for season extensions on both ends of the seasons, and you're going to have a lot of shelves of them. It's probably not the best option because it's going to cost you a lot more in electricity. It's going to, the expense of buying them, it's probably going to balance out, and you're going to be better off with the LEDs because they're not that expensive, really. So I think
No,
it
they're
could be a
not.
better option. And something that I think gets overlooked a lot is the bulbs will frequently need to be replaced. I replaced my bulbs several times. And I have fluorescents in my barn, all through my barn. I'm replacing bulbs all the time. I buy a box of those every 3
Yeah.
months, like a whole
Well,
box
and
of
they're
them.
pretty, you have to be really careful with how you handle them. They're pretty fragile.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll shatter and they make a mess,
yeah.
and it's
Where
really fine glass. You wouldn't want to get none of those
yeah,
slivers in you
yeah.
because they
They're
really
I
really
mean,
kind of
mine are the tubes,
yeah.
and, you just have to be really careful with them, and they do put
Mhm.
off some heat,
And when you go to throw
which
away
I've
the
had.
old ones too, you stick them in a trash can,
Yeah,
you're trying not to break them, and you're trying to, and they're gonna get tossed in the trash truck or whatever, and
exactly.
it's like
Yeah,
they're kind of delicate and hard to work with, but they are an option. I think they're a good option. If you're just
they are.
seed starting small amounts, it's a great option. The fluorescent bulbs are fine. Like I said, T5s are probably the best. We'll get into the lumens, what you'd be looking for here in a few minutes. Let's move on to LEDs. These are the light emitting diode lights. Everybody knows what an LED. It's getting to be
Mhm.
common that even your incandescent lights in your house you've replaced with the LED bulbs.
Yeah, almost everything is now.
Yeah, it just uses a lot less electricity. It's a
Mhm.
good option if you got them all through your house. I think it's a great way to go. They're just becoming way more popular for everything, including grow lights,
Yeah.
because they're really efficient and they last a long time. We were just talking
Mhm.
about we've had ours for several years. I've never had one little diode burn out of any of mine. They're all
I
working.
haven't
All the
either.
lights are working.
Only issue I had with one of mine was actually not the light bulb itself, it was the cord. So, yeah, and they're
Okay.
super light, and they seem fairly indestructible. I don't
Yeah.
really
I've
save
dropped
them.
them. I've
Yep.
dropped them on the cement floor, plug them in, they work fine. It's kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
so they're super
Um,
light. Mine are anyways. They're crazy light. So,
and depending on what you're wanting to do with them and grow lights, they're available in full spectrum models, different spectrums
yeah.
for different things, even adjustable spectrums. I don't know if you've seen those or not. There's some that actually have the dial on them where you can change the spectrum. You can
I
go with
haven't seen
you can go with
those.
more of a
Wow,
blue for seed starting, crank it up to more of a red when it starts getting to
fancy.
fruity levels. Yeah, they are. They're a little more expensive, of course, because they got all that stuff on them. But I think they're a better light too in the long run. They probably are
Yeah, I think
something
that
worth
would be
the.
really cool to have, though,
Yeah.
especially if you're growing, more than just to start your seeds. I think that would be
Yeah,
really
if you're
cool
a
to have that
year-round
option.
grower, yep, it would actually be a really good investment, I think.
Yeah,
But, again, they're a great option for energy efficiency and lasting and how well they do at growing things. I mean, they work. They just work.
they do.
And what we didn't mention about the LED about the incandescents versus the LEDs is they produce less heat.
Yeah,
Fluorescents don't, or incandescents produce a lot of heat, but fluorescents produce some heat. They're not as that bad, but you do
right.
have to keep them off the plant. LEDs produce almost zero heat. I mean, you can put your fingers on them, you can barely feel any warmth
Yeah,
on
I
them.
would say that I have definitely had more issues with scalding my plants with the fluorescence than I
Mhm.
did with the LEDs.
Absolutely.
So,
Um, the one con with them is they do cost a little bit more,
they
but
do.
they're not bad. They're really not bad. When you consider as a long-term investment, I would say it's cheaper
Mhm.
because you're not having to replace those bulbs. And I think in the long run, it's a you'll save money, is what I think. But
Yeah.
now 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. They were so expensive 10, 12 years ago
Yeah.
that I would have said, no, go with, a matter of fact, I think I did a podcast and that's what I said, go with the fluorescence. And I talked about the different spectrums that you were looking for at that time, just for fluorescence, because it was the only thing I thought anybody should be using at the time, unless you were really taking it to the next level. It was just too big of an expense. But
Isn't
it's
that
not
crazy
anymore.
how times change? I mean, I just love my LEDs, and like I think we said mine are like 6 or 8 years old, and mine are on a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I typically this year I'm not. Typically this year mine would have already been on in January. I would have started my onions. So mine are on like 5 months,
Hmm.
10, 12 hours a
Yeah.
day.
I'd say
So,
mine. Yeah,
and I
probably that way
have
too.
a lot of them. I start almost all my own seeds, and I start a lot. So, that's a lot, and we don't really notice a difference in our electric bill with the LEDs.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's because you've never not ran them.
true, true.
Yeah, they don't use a lot, and you can get
Not a
different,
lot.
there are some that have different wattages, so you can look at that too on what they pull, but it's pretty low. I mean, I think mine are like
Yeah,
52 or something. I mean, it's pretty low. I mean, when you compare them to other lights, you run your lights in your kitchens, probably you're gonna use more than they use for a whole shelf of them probably. If you're
yeah,
running, well, it depends on what you have. If you have incandescents, definitely. Um, but yeah, they work. They're just the best. I feel like they're probably the best option for
yeah.
homesteaders
Now that
long term.
technology has improved and the cost has come down because LEDs are just everywhere, they're definitely worth the
Yeah,
investment.
absolutely. Um, the next one we'll talk about is definitely ones that are used more in commercial, large scale growing operations. And these are the high intensity discharge, the HID grow lights. Um, like 20 years ago, when you were talking about grow lights that were really expensive, these were what they were talking about. These things
Mm,
were definitely more expensive. These are the high pressure sodium, the HPS, and the metal halide or whatever it's called. I don't know how it's pronounced. The MH lights. They're really expensive, but they're the best. I mean, no doubt about it. When you're talking about flowering and fruiting plants, a lot of the operations that are growing like house plants indoors for sale, like big commercial operations sell house plants, flowers, things like that, they're using these because they're going to make things flower really well and fruit really well. So they're just the best. I mean, they're the closest thing to the sun that you're going to bring indoors, but they're also very expensive. They're extremely powerful. They're larger. They got these big giant setups a lot
yeah,
of
I
times.
think I've seen them in like
Yeah,
greenhouse when I go in greenhouses. Yeah.
they're very effective, high yield production,
Mhm.
but very expensive to operate. They pull a lot of power. Um, they're pretty expensive to purchase. The bulbs, I just kind of browsed on Amazon. I found like the individual bulbs were like $26 a piece for these ones, the HPS bulbs. But you'd have to have several of those down a row or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
and then
and
it's the operating cost
they
too.
require some ventilation. They put off so much heat that they require some ventilation.
Wow.
Um, so that, they get really hot. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole nother level that most homesteaders, a mass majority of homesteaders are not going to be on
Yeah,
that
we're
level.
probably not gonna go to. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it
So,
is
but
an
so
option.
it's just something I wanted to put out there. That there are even better things, that do a better
Yeah.
job.
Well, and if
But
somebody wants to, slowly migrate to selling some things, it might be something they wanna look into.
yeah, you could absolutely grow trees indoors,
Yeah.
fruiting trees indoors with these things. To be honest, a lot of like your marijuana grow houses and things, this is what they
Oh,
would
I
use to produce
probably,
lots of
because those,
plants.
like, heat and stuff too, so
Yeah, and they put off a lot of heat too and stuff. Yeah,
but
so
they put a
I
lot of
mean,
money into those. They have ventilation systems and
unfortunately, I
everything.
would say most of the advancements that happen in grow lights and cost effectiveness and all the stuff that's
It's
happened
probably
probably
from
come through that
marijuana.
industry. Yeah, because they're
We
the
can
ones
thank
that
the
traditionally.
marijuana industry.
Yeah, yeah, I've been very they played a big part in all
Right.
the good things that's happened in grow lights. um, but yeah, those
Well,
are
if I ever
the
win the
main options.
lottery, this might be the sign that I won the lottery is I get one of these lights.
Have a big barn with this kind of stuff hanging up in the full
Yeah,
blown stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Grow your yeah, all your fruit trees, grow banana trees in your barn.
I'll have
Yeah.
a banana and an orange tree in my barn.
Now, we all just mentioned that there are other bulbs like incandescents and things too.
Uh-huh.
These are not the best options. They're way too hot. They don't last. They're low efficiency. Just it's pretty much out. You don't want to use any kind of incandescent bulb or anything like that, or heat lamp type bulbs. There are UV bulbs and things like that, but generally they don't have the right spectrums, like blue spectrum. Usually they're more on the red end. They won't
Right,
see
and
very well.
spectrum is important.
It's just really good to stick with probably either fluorescents or the grow light LEDs. It's probably what you're looking
Yep.
for. So let's jump into kind of the key considerations when choosing grow lights. We're going to talk first about lumens and light intensity.
Lumen.
Yeah, this is the measure of the brightness of the light source, and it can also affect the light spectrum. Like generally, it with the fluorescence, it tends to go one way anyway.
Yeah,
So
so there's like
ceilings,
a rainbow, like everybody sees the rainbow, and that's kind of what we're talking about is what the lights put off, which you don't see with your
yeah,
naked eye.
and you can have more lumens, but for what I'm going to mention here, but less is this is kind of like the minimum for seedlings. Your minimum is like 2,000 to 3,000 lumens per square foot. For vegetative growth, 3,000 to 5,000 lumens per square foot, and for flowering and fruiting, it's 5,000 plus. So you can actually find fluorescents. I think I've seen them clear up to 6,500. But
Okay.
if any 5,000 will do pretty much anything. If you can find the 5,000 lumen, that's pretty much all you need. It'll do the seed starting. It'll do like if you're growing lettuce. I think I was using 5,000 lumen when I was growing lettuce in my beds in the house in my basement, and it worked just fine. Because
Right.
obviously, if plants receive too little light, they're going to become really leggy and weak. And too
Yes.
much light, on the other hand, can cause leaf burn, especially if you've got that light too close to the plant.
And I've done that
And
myself before, and
I've
yeah.
I've actually done it with LEDs because in my aquaponics setup, I let the plants grow. Didn't have adjusters on them. I had them at the top. Well, the plants got right
Okay.
up against the lights, and the light burned, not because of the heat so much, it was just the light was burning the tips of all those plants because they were basically almost touching the lights. And so it was too much even for that. Even though it wasn't being LED, it didn't put off hardly any heat, but the light can actually burn the tips of your leaves and things. So that's kind of what you're looking for in your lumens. If you're going to get fluorescence, I would say your 5,000 is probably what you're looking for. Now, here's the thing also, the when it comes to the fluorescence, generally the higher the lumens, it's more blue light. The
Yeah.
lower the lumens, it's more red light. So what we'll learn here in a minute is that the blue lights is actually better for seed starting.
Yeah, like the
Red light
green
is actually better
starting.
for flowering and fruiting. So we'll get more into that here in a second. So I feel like the 5,000 is really good because generally you're not growing flowering and fruiting things under fluorescent bulbs, but it'll grow lettuce just fine, and it'll start your seeds just fine. So 4,000 to 5,000 will probably do. You could go 3,500. It would probably do it. If you're only seed starting, you can go even lower, and it will actually be more efficient on your electric bill if
Yeah,
you
so
go lower.
there's like the seed starting, and then there's people that are maybe taking a little bit further and doing like some
Right.
aquaponics or crack key inside their house and
Yeah.
growing things to finish them and pick them in the house. But
Yeah.
for seed starting, the lower is going to be fine.
It's going to be more efficient as far as the electric bill goes if you're using fluorescents. But again, if you're wanting to take things a little bit further and get a little bit wider relief and things look really strong and healthy, I would say 3,500 to 5,000 is probably going to be a really good sweet spot for you. As far as power usage, the bulbs, the cost of bulbs, and the setup, just everything is probably going to be a good place to be. So let's just jump into light spectrum. This is where things get a little bit technical, I
Yeah,
guess.
and that's where I actually got ahead of myself with the rainbow and the color. I got dogs making noise, so my
Yeah, I heard
apologies.
them, but we're not worried about it. We like puppies on this podcast. We don't mind. um, Plants require different light wavelengths at different growth stages. So what I was talking about earlier with the blue light, it really does promote a strong vegetative growth. It's really good for seed starting. It's really good for that first initial leaf growth. Red light encourages flowering and fruiting, as we mentioned. So, but what you'll find in a lot of LEDs is you get these full spectrum lights. So they'll have some blue light, they'll have some
Yeah.
mid-range light, which is your green and yellows, and then they'll have some red also. So you're looking probably what you're going to want in a LED grow light is a full spectrum light. It's what I would recommend. It just seems to do everything. Your blue light runs between the measurements in nms. That's your wavelengths of your blue light, or your, I forget what it actually stands for, but it's 4 to 500 is your blue light. 6 to
Yeah, I
700
can't
is your
remember.
red light. Now they also have something in between there, and you're like your 5 and 600. There's also like the green and yellow spectrums. There's folks that say that doesn't have much to do with growth, but I've also seen some studies where it does. So I think
Yeah.
full spectrum's better. I think full spectrum's better.
Yes. I think the closer you can get to what the sun is doing, the
Yeah.
best. And the
Yeah.
sun is providing all of those. So,
There
yeah.
is, I've seen some studies. I was watching some videos on what's called dark red light, and it's above 700. So it's generally in the 750, 800 range. And full spectrum will kind of go down into that a little bit. So you will get some of that. But I guess from what I've been seeing on some studies, the dark red light is really good if you're taking it the next step with flowering or fruiting. If you're really going full mature plants, those are really
Okay.
good. And I
So, like, if
guess
you wanted to grow a tomato inside, you would want that.
yeah, you would
Okay.
definitely want some dark red might even be beneficial in that. You can do it with just the 700, but I guess if you can get closer to 8, it even does better. So, most of from what I see, most of the full spectrum lights have a really good range of 4 to 700. Here's where you get into a little bit of where I might not have the best lights and you actually have better lights than me. Because what I did notice is that the white lights, which is what you have, and I have they're almost like a purple hue
Purpley
or a
pink
pinkish,
hue.
yeah,
Yeah.
hue, um, don't have hardly any of the mid-range. They'll have a
Yeah.
spike of blue and a lot of red, which is actually not the best for seed starting or that mid-leaf growth. Great for fruiting and flowering, but
Okay.
I'm generally not taking things that far anyway. So you would probably be better to have the white lights because they have a more level range of that blue to red. Um, and usually a little more blue, which is really what you want for that early stage, that seed starting and that first leaf growth. So the white lights, in my opinion, from what I've been seeing, are the better
Yeah.
ones.
And
It
I
should have a
can't take
range.
credit for that. That was my friend Andrew that gave me that tip. So,
I think though you do want the full spectrum because you do want the full
for sure.
range in there. What you'll look for, and I've got a picture in the show notes if you have to want to go and see, you'll see in generally if you go to Amazon or some
Mhm.
listing, they'll generally have a picture of a graph and it'll say full spectrum and you'll have the colors. It'll show you the colors on the graph. You'll want to see all the colors in there. You'll want to see the blue, the green, the red. When I brought up the lights you have and I brought up the lights I have. The picture in the show
Mhm.
notes are the lights you have.
Yeah.
The picture for my lights, there's almost nothing in the middle. It's
Okay, so
blue
it's blue
and red.
and then red. Okay.
Drops down to almost nothing, and then it shoots up with a lot of red. Where yours has got a lot more blue than what mine do. So
Yeah,
it's
I mean, I have had great success using the ones I have. So, yeah.
yeah, I think it's good to have that range from 4 to 700, just pretty full. I think is where you're going to see the best. And I'll tell you what, I like the white lights better because it's easier to see if there's any problems with your plants. It's very hard to even tell if you have burnt leaves or
Yeah.
anything under those red lights because everything's just glowing, so the same color, everything looks the same.
And
It's really
depending
hard
on
to
where you have your lights, it can be really disruptive to your
I
light. And I think you've had yours in your kitchen. I can't imagine having that.
well, I don't. I have them in a room in my house, but I
Okay,
generally
okay.
have them. But I took your advice. I dropped those reflective blankets around them, so it does drop the hue. I don't get
Those
that
are
hue throughout the
amazing.
house.
They help a lot.
We can talk about that here in a few minutes, but yeah, I mean, I actually sometimes have to shut the lights off and have just a regular room light so I can kind of inspect the plants and see how they're
That
doing
makes
because
sense.
you can't hardly see anything with that glow on them. So
Right.
I'm actually not a fan of them, and I've been using them for years. They do okay, but I think the white lights do better. I mean, from everything I've read and seen, it looks like they do better. I actually seen this guy actually ran an experiment. I was watching. I'll see if I can find the YouTube video
Yeah, you
and
should
link
put
it
that
up,
link in there. We talked
because
about it.
this guy did a crack key test. He had a crack key aquaponics or hydroponics test. He had the same tote, and he had lettuce growing on one side and the other. So he's using the same mixture in the tote. He dropped a blanket or something down between them, so the light wasn't going from one side to the other on the same tote. He put the red hue light on one side, the white one on the other, same brand, same pretty much everything except for the different spectrums. And he grew lettuce. And I would say the lettuce on the white one was nearly double the size as the other lettuce when he
Wow.
took it to maturity.
That much
And
difference.
yeah, he put it on scale and was weighing it and everything, and he's showing and way wider leaves. The leaves were way wider. They both looked good. And he
Right.
actually did a little taste test too. And he said, I don't know, I can't really scientifically verify this, but I can tell you, I feel like the stuff growing under the red light was more bitter than the stuff growing under the white light.
Wow. That's interesting.
So, yeah, again, that spectrum variance might have just done something to that and made it a little bit better tasting even. So, just that test right there made me go, ooh, maybe I should invest in some white lights.
I like mine a lot. My
Yeah.
only complaint is that I wish that they weren't 4 feet long. I wish I would have gotten some 2-foot ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. I have the 2-foot ones is what I have.
Yeah, mine are 4, and
Yeah,
they're
and
kind
I
of a
like it
pain.
because I have the 2-foot shelves, and it just fits right up on those,
I
and I
do
have
too.
several
So
of
I
them.
have to put 2 2-foot shelves next to each other to run my
Okay.
4-foot. Yeah.
Yeah, it works out great.
Yeah.
Obviously, the wattage and efficiency, LEDs are your best option if you're
Yeah.
looking for that. They're gonna use the least amount of power of all these. Let's talk about the setup a little bit. Let's coverage area. Like,
Yeah.
on a shelf, when I'm setting up the shelf, what I do is I've got the 2-foot by what is it, about a little over a foot, I think, like 14 inches deep. My shelves are, so they're like 24 by 14 or something like that. And I have 2 lights on each shelf, shining down on each shelf because I
Same.
get better
Yep.
coverage. I've seen people run one right down the middle and try to balance out their trays in the middle, but I run my trays all the way to the edge. I just put them this way so I can get more trays in there, and I'll put them like 3
Same.
wide, and I really squeeze them in there. So I want that light coming all the way to the edge. Now, what has helped me with that is, um, what you made the suggestion last year, and
Mhm.
I started doing it, is using those reflective blankets, those heat
Yeah, they're
blankets,
like emergency blankets.
emergency
The
blankets,
reflective
and I put
emergency
them
blankets.
all the way around the shelf, and I just kinda taped them up there
Mhm.
and let them drape down on the sides, and it really helps reflect that light back in
Yeah.
to the shelves, and it did make a difference. It made it well, 2 things that made a difference on. I feel like it did better with the lighting on the actual plants, and it also just kept all that light out of the room because, I got that pink glow
Yes.
everywhere.
Well, I
Um,
was trying to so my grow, lights and setup was right next to my canning setup, and ideally, when you have your home canned jars, you don't want light on them. You want them
yeah,
dark in a dark spot,
UV,
but I didn't
yeah.
want those lights shining on them all the time, and so my original thought was just to block that, but then I realized how much it reflected, and it actually the plants were doing better. So and it
Yeah.
was really inexpensive. I don't know what they are now. I
Oh,
bought like a 10 pack of them on Amazon, and at the time they were a
yeah.
buck a piece.
Now they're $1 or 2 a piece at the most, yeah, and I think I used, like, 2 per
And you can
shelf or
reuse
something.
them.
Oh, yeah.
I
Well,
reuse them. I just fold them back up
if
and shove them in a box and
if you don't over tape them like I did,
yeah, yeah.
ripping tape
But
off, you're gonna tear them up, but,
and it also puts some heat in there. I mean, LEDs throw off just a
yes.
tad bit of heat. It did keep a little heat in there. I have mine in the basement, which they were a little bit on the cool side. But you do have to watch that heat because there's certain plants that won't like it.
And another caveat to that too, once you wrap that reflective blanket on that, you're not gonna get the ventilation, the draft
Yeah,
that you want, and it does make your plants a little bit more susceptible to getting a little bit of, mildew or even mold
yeah,
on
and
the
damping
soil.
off. Yep.
Yeah, so you wanna so what I do as soon as they pop, I'm getting a couple fans on the sides, and I'm just dropping the blankets down the front and back, and then on the ends, I leave it open, and I just run a fan across there and let air kinda blow
Yeah,
through there and, make some ventilation and,
definitely. I use a
um
fan from the beginning too. It just you
yeah.
get a lot healthier plants with a fan.
Yeah, and it
Um,
does help harden them off too because they get that wind movement,
yes.
and it does help a little bit with the hardening off. Now let's talk a little bit about the distance of the light to the plant, because this is a big one. A lot of people
Oh
have
yeah,
questions
that's
about
big.
this. And it completely matters about which kind of bulb you're using, of course, and
Mhm.
the stage of the plant is really important too. So, um, generally recommended different a distance from a plant. Fluorescents, they need to be like 2 to 4 inches above the plant. I mean, pretty
Yeah, they
close.
gotta be
Four
pretty
inch. I
close.
usually run about 4 inches, and you just gotta keep moving it. Now,
Mhm.
I'll go ahead and mention this now. They make these little. You can use the chains and kind of
The pain.
constantly be adjusting. It's a pain in the rear. Or you can get these little rope adjusters that are really nice. They're like a little. You just slide the rope through them. They slide up and lock, and put those on it, and it's real quick. You can just slide those really quick. Those are pretty nice. Those are pretty
Yeah, I think
nice.
I'm gonna have to get some of those because I'm
Yeah.
getting really tired of messing with the chains.
Yeah. So fluorescents need to be a lot closer just because their light intensity isn't quite as strong. LEDs can be a lot further away. 12 inches, 12 to 18 inches is
Mhm.
really fine on those. And just keep it wherever the top of the plant is. That's where you want to be, 12 inches or whatever. If you're using the HID lights, those really high intensity
Yeah,
professional lights,
those
those need to be far away, like a couple feet minimum, but probably even further away. They're putting off a lot of heat. So
yeah,
you
I can
want
see those
far away.
really burning your plant up for
And
sure.
they're really strong. They're just really strong lights too. But again, there's also stages of the plant. When you're having seedlings,
Yeah,
like I said, 2 to 4 inches on them fluorescents, right, real close. I mean, to get those things to, but as soon as they pop, you need to start moving them because they're
right.
going to spring up. But what this does, it'll keep those plants from getting leggy. Leggy just means they'll stretch to the light. And if it's too far
Yeah, they
away
get really
and it's not strong
strong,
enough,
like, they get really tall and weak and fall
hmm
over, and you want a sturdy plant, not a
yeah.
leggy plant. So, yeah.
So yeah, you want to keep that light close for fluorescence, little further away for each because this, like I said, the intensity of the light and the spectrums and stuff, they can handle a little bit more. Um, Another question you have a lot though is how long to run the lights. I mean, this question happens all the time. How long do you run
Yeah.
yours?
It about 12 hours,
Yeah, I
maybe a little
generally
bit longer.
I was running mine at 12. I found it seemed like they were not looking as strong as they should have been. So I started running a couple of years ago. I started on mine 14 hours a day, and they seem like they did
Yeah.
really good. It's a good balance, but generally 12 to 16 hours is
It
how
used
long
to
you want
be
to
I
run
would
them.
run them for, 12 hours and then 36 hours and then 12 hours until I got a timer. So definitely
Because you
use
forget.
timers
Is that
because
what you're
I'm
saying?
forgetful. I would forget to turn them on or I would forget
Yes.
to turn them off. And yeah, so now I have a
I
timer.
can I love and I've had 3 different kinds of timers. I've had the digital ones that are super easy to set, and I have burned up several of those. And I've
Mhm.
had 2 different kinds of those, but I'll put the link to the ones that I'm using now, those little ones you just pull a little they're more of a mechanical setup, and you
Yeah,
just
they're like
pop the little yeah, you just pop the little
yeah, it's
clip
more
up
analog.
wherever so much better. The analog ones, I've never had one of those go
I
bad.
switched
Never.
back to those too
Yep,
because I was having failures and I
yep,
just went and got the ones that you have because they
yeah.
definitely do not fail as much.
I've never had one of those fail, and I've been using them for a few years, but I've had several of those the digital
Yep.
ones fail, several of them, because I was using a lot of those for aquaponics, and I
Yeah.
just had so many disasters because the timer failed.
Well, and the
Um,
automation is just so nice because like I said, I would either forget to turn them on
yeah,
or I would forget to turn them off.
yep, and I'll just plug
So,
those in and set them up, and then not have to worry about them. The downside of that is sometimes when you automate too much, you forget that those plants also need some water.
yeah, they need to
You
be
get to worry
checked
you get to where you're
on.
not worrying about the lights, and then you forget about the water, so we can talk about that some other time, but you have to plants need more than just light, just to
Mhm.
put it out there.
Yeah.
Um, but also you wanna keep your temperatures between 65 and 75 kinda optimally, and the lights will help with that, those blankets really help with that, if you do that, but if your house is just naturally set there, if you're inside, you don't have to worry about it. When I was doing this outside in my barn, I had to
Yeah.
be way more cautious about it. I actually would stick
Yes.
a heater down at the bottom, and that heat would rise up through the shelf, plus blanket in there, and it really helped. But,
Yeah, you would have to
most
do
people
that
don't
out
do that.
there.
Yeah, yeah. But, again, if you kinda carry on with all those things, you're gonna get some really nice, healthy seedlings for transplant. Now, things kinda change a little bit when you're trying to get full-size plants indoors. If you're growing fully grown leafy greens, herbs, dwarf fruiting plants indoors, you're gonna have to really adjust that light placement. You're really gonna have to pay attention to like proper air circulation to prevent that mold. You're really gonna have to pay attention to things like humidity and heat levels.
Yeah.
Um,
Humidity becomes very big.
Very big, and use a mixture of blue and red light for balance. So these full spectrum lights are going to be good, but you're probably going to get there running fluorescence on one spectrum. You're probably going to have to get a couple different kinds of bulbs to get them to different stages if you're using fluorescent bulbs. So it just becomes a whole nother animal, when you're taking it to that level. But for most homesteaders, what we're going to do is we're going to seed start and a simple setup, like we just mentioned, with some simple, inexpensive LED grow lights or even incandescent lights are going to get you there if you just follow those little
some kind of
practices.
shelf setup where you can adjust the lights as the plants grow somehow. Yep.
Some common mistakes, though, you do kind of have to pay attention to is look for light burn. When leaves start turning yellow or brown, it can be because either one, too much intensity of light, but it's usually caused by too close to the light, which because of too much intensity, really. But when these plants are too close to the light, depending again which bulbs you're using, it could get worse. Fluorescents are more apt to do it than LEDs, but they can both do it and burn the leaves, the tips of your plants. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
Again, that's way easier to see with the white lights than the colored lights.
Yes, it is.
Way easier. Look for leggy seedlings caused by insufficient light. It may mean that you don't have a strong enough light, or it may mean that your light's too far away from your plants. Or again, this is because they're too far away, but it could be because you're maybe trying to run one light down the middle of a tail.
Maybe because you need
the ones on the edges are having to stretch to get to the light toward the middle.
Yeah,
so that's why I
have to like you do. It's just I like to run everything right to the edge for each shelf space.
Yeah, so you just got to make sure you're getting full coverage because the ones on the edges will stretch. Now, if you're wanting to constantly be turning your trays and working with them, you can get by with it, but I don't like to have to do that. So I want to make sure I'm getting a pretty even light across that whole tray, because you will see it. The ones on the edges start stretching and getting leggy. And if it's tomatoes, I don't worry about that too much because I actually kind of like my tomatoes kind of leggy, so I can bury the stems and get more roots. But anything else, I don't want to see like that. And you're going to want to look for mold and damping off, and that's really just
that becomes a big thing. I think
that
it's probably the top 3 or 4 issues with starting seeds inside is the damping off. For sure.
And if you got good airflow and then you're just avoiding overwatering, especially if you can bottom water, that's really great. That'll help a lot with that, and getting a good airflow will help with that. So those are just
and as your plants get bigger, the airflow, it gets harder to get the airflow through there as they get bigger and leaf out. So it's really important you get the airflow then.
Yeah. Like I said, I use a box fan at the one end.
Yeah, I use a 20 by 20 box fan. That's a pretty big. Yep.
It'll move some air. I mean, even on low, you just put it on low. It'll move quite a bit of air through there.
You feel like you're going to kill those babies with all that air, but you're really not.
It's actually really good. It makes for a stronger plant. It does for sure.
They get used to it.
So just for kind of a wrapping up here at the end, budget-friendly DIY grow light setup, fluorescent shop lights or mid-range LED panels are probably going to be your best setup. Adding some automation is not that expensive, well worth it. Some grow light stand ideas, obviously adjustable shelving is what we use, and I love, with the light strips across the top, the LED strips. You can repurpose old shop lights. If you don't want to buy something, you can find old shop lights really cheap, used ones or whatever. Sometimes people just give them away because they've put up new lights.
Yes.
It can be free. It can be free. As a matter of fact, the first setup I had in my basement, I believe I did get the old shop lights out of my garage when I changed my lights out in there.
I think I got some free too.
I think I had to buy, I bought new bulbs, obviously, but the actual light setup those things are really cheap. You can create something out of PVC or wood, build your own little stands. When I had them in the greenhouse, I made 2x4 shelving and set the trays across there, and it worked just fine. You can do off-grid setups with solar powered grow lights. You're probably going to have to go with LEDs because anything else is probably going to drain the system too fast.
I would guess,
but you could definitely set up some solar panels and some batteries and run, use some low wattage LEDs and pull it off, especially if you're using them for supplemental light in a greenhouse or something like that. I think it'd be really, really good if you could pull that off and not add anything to your electric bill. That'd be great. I think that grow lights are just a really powerful tool for homesteaders. If you're looking to start seeds early, grow food year round, boost your plant health. And I think that selecting a good grow light with all the things we talked about, the full spectrum, the good range, the right lumens, it's worth your time and a little
Mhm.
bit of money to set it
Yes.
up, I think. And it can make a big difference on your homestead. Um, Avoid those common mistakes like we talk about, and I think you'll have a lot of success. I've had a lot of success with mine doing that, and I think it,
Oh, I
you
have
know,
had a lot of success in I've saved so much money, like probably thousands of dollars over the
yeah,
course of the 20 year, 30 years of gardening.
yeah,
I
I think
I
so too.
probably didn't start doing seed starting though until about 15 years ago.
Hmm.
But in that 15 years, I mean, I have grown hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plants, and it definitely saves money.
I think, yeah, it saves money and it enables you to put a lot more food on your shelves too, because it just extends that growing season by so much. And if you're
Yeah.
like us, our goal is to produce
Yeah, and on
nutrient rich,
small
dense,
lots.
chemical free food, and it'll
Yep.
help you get there. It'll provide a lot more for you on your shelves. So I think
Yeah.
it's such a benefit to a homestead.
And on small lots, you and I both do some succession planting. So the
Mhm.
second something comes out of a
Yeah.
bed, we plant something in it.
Yeah, it
And
isn't just for spring for us. We're seed starting all the way through the year. Yeah,
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 so starting seeds is a huge thing, especially I mean sometimes last year I was able to get no, it wasn't last year, it was the year before. I was able to get 2 potato crops in because I planted in March. We had a really early spring. I planted in March and then I planted again in July.
yeah.
So, you can do some of that stuff and extend the season.
I did it with
So,
cucumbers last year, 'cause it seems like my
did
cucumbers
you
always start
really?
browning and
Wow.
getting kind of bad, and I actually started a second crop of
Yeah.
cucumbers this last year, and it worked pretty well, because we eat a lot of
Yeah. So, I mean,
cucumbers.
and you could start those inside the second time, or you don't need to start them inside, but it definitely helps, especially at the beginning of the season, get that
Mhm.
early start. You end up starting with bigger plants. If you start with a big tomato plant outside, you're going to get your
Oh,
tomatoes just that much
yeah, you
earlier.
can get them a month earlier by just starting those seeds indoors, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can just get way more tomatoes, especially if it's an indeterminate plant, which bears for the rest of the season.
And a lot of things like your summer squash or your fall squash, your winter squash,
Yeah.
and your melons and things like that. I love getting a jump start on those because I hate waiting until clear to the fall, late fall
Yes.
before I start getting some of that stuff. So I want my winter squash early. I want my melons early. I love getting a jump start on all
Yeah.
that
Because
stuff.
you never know. So, I mean, here we can have winter in November, or we have had years where winter started in September.
Yeah,
So it's always nice
absolutely.
pretty early. But one of the things I was going to share was this starting seeds indoors. It's one of the story wisdom bulletins. It's super tiny, like skinny. I can hardly see it, but it's actually really handy because it talks about some of the stuff we talked about. Not really. It's a little bit outdated to talk about the different kinds of lights, but it talks about the need for certain seeds. So some seeds need heat to start. Some seeds need darkness to start. Some
Mhm.
seeds need light to start. And this little booklet just walks you
Yep.
through all that. And
Mhm.
it's super handy. It's really affordable. You can probably find that. I would guess that you could probably find all of that information also on somewhere like Johnny's. Johnny's has an amazing website, the Johnny's Seed Catalog.
Yeah.
So you might be able to find all that information on their website as well if you didn't want to spend the money on this little booklet.
Well, and if you know what you're starting, I mean,
Mhm.
literally a simple Google search and just ask Google, and
Yep.
you'll find 5, 10 blogs that'll
Yeah.
explain this one likes dark or this one likes heat and this one, just you could
Yeah,
just
like
Google each seed
classically
individually and yeah,
your tomatoes and pepper. Anything that likes heat usually likes heat to start.
yeah.
So,
But I
yeah.
believe it's onions that need dark to start. I mean,
Yes, they do.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
seeds that want dark. They don't want that initial light. And then as soon as they start to go, then you put the light on them.
Yeah,
So
and you can find all that by just, like, doing your research. Sometimes the
mhm.
back of the seed packet is really helpful, and they have a lot of information. Sometimes the seed packet isn't very helpful, and you need to look for more information, but
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I tell you what I would like to see happen. I would love to, if once you listen to this podcast and you want to share in some comments or even go on our
Yeah,
Homestead
that would
Front
be
Porch
fun.
Facebook group. This is the time of the year when people are starting to set up their little shelvings and putting their lights on.
Mhm.
And I would love to see some setups. I'd love to see some pictures. I'd like you to even just tell us about what you're using, maybe the kind that you
Yeah.
recommend. If you have a kind of grow light that you're really happy with, share it in the comments. You can do that on the website. You can do it here on YouTube. You can do it, on podcast players. There's places for comments, but I'd love to even in the Facebook group because you can share pictures there of your setup. I'd love to see some setups. So yeah, be part of that. I'd love to see what you're doing
I'd love to
because
see setups. I'd love to see what people are starting. Some people, we have
yeah.
people. We just had somebody in the Facebook group. Was it from Australia? I
Mhm.
believe. And they have totally different things that can grow there. And I always love to see
Yeah.
what people can grow where it's warm.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there's people here in the United States. It's this is their peak gardens right now, probably.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you're in
down south.
Arizona right now, you're probably already growing something green
Oh yeah,
and
they've got it all going on. But yeah, I love seeing setups. It's I'm excited. I just seen Tom from Small Scale Life just posted in here. He's so ready to get growing, and I think
yeah.
most people are. I mean, this is the time of the year when I start getting excited. I'm starting to think about getting that garden
Mm.
in. Every time I look out my window and I just see that space out there on my garden bed squared off, and I'm like, okay, I'm so ready to get some things in the ground. We're a long ways from that, really, but I'm
Yeah.
ready, and I'm reading the seed catalogs. I'm getting excited. I'm seeing the pictures. But I want to see people setups in the house too, because that excites me and it makes me think, okay, what is there anything I can do better? Because I got a pretty good setup. It's
Yeah.
working really well, but hey, I'm open to improvement, and I get these, like I said, like a
Exactly.
couple of years ago, you opened me up to those blankets on the sides to reflect that light back in and stuff, and it made a big difference.
Well,
And
your timers made a big difference for me. So yeah,
yeah, I
I
mean, I
love
just love that we
everybody.
can just bounce these ideas off each other and get, do better every year. And every year it's just an opportunity to have a better garden and a better setup. And, it gets exciting. This is always exciting to me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we have so
I'm
much
ready.
snow right now. It's going to be a while. Like I think I remember. I think I said it in the beginning of the podcast that we have it. It's like to my thigh right now when I was trying to move the setup for our internet. So and more coming. Yay!
Yeah. See, Tom said this is something else that we didn't really mention though. That he has his seed station ready to go, and he's actually going to start some ginger because it has a really
Oh,
long growing season. Well, there are plants like that. There are some things that need that extension just
yeah.
to get to maturity. It ain't just about growing more of it. It's about being able to actually get it to maturity. And you might need to start like we talk about onions. We're starting onions at the end of January and February, end of February
Mhm.
from seed
Yep.
because they have a really long growing season from seed. You need that. You need that time to make it happen. If you're
Yep.
living in a place where we live, we need that extra time. And for those of us that have snow on the ground and stuff, we need that extra time. So we need the
Yeah,
grow light. It's a necessity.
ginger is a lovely thing to grow. It just smells so yummy. I love ginger. I
Yeah,
should start
yeah,
some.
absolutely. So
Now
those
you
of you
got
who
me
said
motivated.
hi, Digger, I seen he said good afternoon. I mean, it wasn't acknowledging some of the comments here, but yeah, we're glad to have you guys join us on YouTube. I've really enjoyed doing the YouTube thing. I mean, we don't usually promote it and get a bunch of people in here, but I always love it when people bring in a little input and stuff. So
It's fun.
yeah, it's fun. So we might start promoting that in the Facebook group and stuff, trying to get a little more people over here and have some
Now
conversation.
that
But
we're used to it, it took us it was a little change
but
for
at
us.
first we were just like, let's just make sure it's going to work first.
Well, and I mean, I was having some issues with internet and I'm glad it went well today. This is, our first podcast from with different internet here. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's worked
yeah,
out well. I think it's been
it
working out
has.
well. So yeah, I think that's it. You have anything else you wanna throw in there at the end here?
I think that's it. I'm really ready for spring.
We're also ready for spring. Yeah, I'm ready for some long daylight days and some warm weather. I've got a
Sunshine,
hankering for it, but
man,
it's
sunshine would be nice.
sometimes I don't know if we would appreciate it as much as we do if we didn't have to go through this though. So
That
that's
is
just, I guess,
that's very true. Very
yeah.
true.
So I'll be appreciating it when it gets here all the more. So well, folks, and until next time, happy homesteading. God bless.
And grow where you're planted.